Alright! My favorite heroes in this trash mobile game! I can't wait to make them OP! You are the biggest letdown in this entire game. When it comes to the heroes in Fire Emblem Heroes, some are going to be better than others. I mean, it's a gacha game. It's kind of expected with things like this, or with a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh! But when some heroes get outdated or downright power crept, then we have the fans of said heroes get a little miffed about Fire Emblem Heroes in general. That's when Refines changed the game for everyone, since they have the power to make anyone good. I mean, look at Alm. Before the Refine, he was just a glorified Crom that was 5-star locked. But at the time of his Refine, he was considered one of the best Refines in the game. Another example could be Saizo, whose position in the meta has been much improved thanks to his Refine. But where are my manners? I'm the Chaos Jester, and welcome to my top 10 heroes that need a Refine. When I went about making this list, I thought about looking into many different factors such as, were they good in base game? Were they a free unit? Was their placement on various tier lists? What stats do they have that are considered bad nowadays? What is their original tier list placement? Do units do their current job better? So with that being said, let's talk about Draug. Draug was never much to write home about in his base game, and despite Heroes' effort to give him a more attractive facelift, compared to what made Norn look for some avatar action on the side, he still struggles to stand out in the current meta, and with Norn. At his debut, however, he actually got a speed stat that put him on par with some fast sword units at the time, with his only downside being his awful res stat and limiting armor movement. Since nothing here sticks out as particularly awful, what is so bad about Draug? Well, his base kit isn't anything special, with regular brave weapons being something you generally want to stay away from, since Mind Spy speed is almost never good for a unit that isn't dumping speed. His base offensive stat line is 30 attack and 32 speed, which isn't very impressive when you consider the current stat line most units get upon release nowadays. Despite 32 speed being decently fast for an armor unit at launch, today it isn't really very fast, with some sword units being able to reach 42 speed without trying. Other armor units generally outclass him, such as the Black Knight, who is not only free, but has distant counter and a 500 point special in his base kit. Or even Arden, who is defensively superior and has a follow-up ring, making using Draug feel kinda pointless for his original purpose. For his Refine, it would likely be best for him to have Vengeful Fight or base effect on his sword, with a Refine that gives bonus stats if he has more in-combat defense than his opponent. Since it is in combat, it would also count defense granting skills such as Drive Defense or Ward Armor. I mean, his name is Guard backwards. You have to give him a defensive Refine if he has to have one. But it could be worse. He could have his girl be better than him at a defensive role. Oh wait. There's a common saying about the mannequins. You screw one, you go to jail. Which is fitting, because they are the epitome of jailbait. So with that statement in mind, why did intelligence systems go to jail for screwing over Kanamail? Okay. Kanamail isn't exactly bad. His stat line is good overall with no bad stats. However, no access to IVs can make him kinda bad compared to other dragons of similar nature. Especially ones that share his color and don't have to be accessed via grails. For instance, Noe. Noe technically has less defensive stats, with 1 less defense and 2 less resistance, but she not only comes with Lightning Breath plus Innate, but she also has access to IVs and can generally outclass Kanamail in any one stat other than speed. Not only that, but male Kana's female counterpart got a very good weapon refine with Sun Dragonstone, and honestly, doesn't need much help to kick butt. She is good as a tank, even without a boon, and could theoretically double, since her respectable speed stat and access to lull attack speed can allow her to generally outspeed the opponent easily enough. Meanwhile, Kana Male can't even find himself much of a niche outside of being a free dragon unit. Shame that he doesn't get much love in Heroes, but then again, this isn't the first time this is the case, considering his supports with any girl in the Fates games. Talk about heartbreak! But what about his refine? Ideally, male Kana would get the same base weapon as female Kana, with the refine being lull speed resistance, as he benefits greatly from having the extra speed and killing power, but more than likely, he will get lull defense resistance. Even with that, he could have a niche as a good wall breaker if he were to use an offensive skill such as Swift Sparrow 3. The same refine, but with opposite stats, can give him so many options for a niche, such as wall breaker or even a tank. I mean, the kid was one of the best in Fates. You gotta give the poor boy something. Sadly, it seems that he isn't the only one with a birthright to needing a refine. This revelation isn't exactly surprising, but it would be fun to see their conquest. Yes, I made a pun that requires more force than someone trying to save her attack stat. Like seriously, with how she is in her base game, there is no way that female Corrin should have one of the lowest attack stats. In fact, you could argue with all the customization Corrin could have, she could arguably have one of the highest attacks in Fates. Her low attack, shown in Heroes, has no real base for existing. But let's be generous here and talk about her positives. She has a good speed and defense stat, with both of them reaching almost 35 on their own. In addition to this, her HP is also decent. However, this is where the positives end. Her attack is atrocious, with a base 27, giving her the second lowest attack for a Dragonstone unit, only rivaling Ninian, who could not even attack in her game. If Odin was 22 attack and the Blade Tome was bad, there is no hope for this princess. In Fates, she was considered one of the best units in the game, thanks to multiple customization options that allowed her to be very flexible with stats, and she isn't even a free unit. So, honestly, a refine for her is kind of needed. At this point, it feels like Garen oversees her refine, since he isn't showing her any love at all. What do I picture her refine to be? Maybe an opposite to male Corrin's refine, with a Dragonstone that gives her a dragon effectiveness, +2 to all stats, and a refine that grants the opponent -4 to all stats when near her supported ally. It would give her a niche outside of that free-to-play dragon unit nobody wants and everyone hates, since, fittingly enough, she can get outclassed by her own child due to similar stat lines, but male Kana having an actual attack stat. She is a freaking main lord of a game! She shouldn't be low on the tier list, for heaven's sake! And no, giving her an OP ult doesn't help things! Fire Emblem Heroes had a very interesting lineup of Grand Hero Battles units for its launch, with Robin and Ursula both being free units everyone was happy to get at the time. If you could even beat Ursula's Grand Hero Battle, since it was one of the hardest Grand Hero Battles during launch! But wait, aren't I forgetting someone? Well, to be fair, everyone else forgot him too when you see his stat line. Oh boy, Narcian! When I saw you were a playable unit, I was excited to have you! Then when I realized how bad you were, I was excited to bench you! Having horrible offense and speed is probably a kiss of death to many units, but Narcian is lucky enough to have decent defense and average resistance. Sadly, he is still outclassed by another Axe Flyer named Baruka, who has 5 more defense and HP than Narcian at the cost of 4 resistance and 6 speed, which, considering Narcian's speed, neither of them is getting a good chance at winning the next Olympics. Not only that, but Narcian's kit has him without a proficient weapon, which means if you really want to build him, you'll have to waste 20,000 feathers to give the man a weapon like Hackle Lantern Plus or Poleaxe Plus, while Baruka has that for the cost of simply her proficient weapon and the due required to refine it. I mean, this guy is one of the 2 who defeated Hector in Binding Blade, for heaven's sake. You gotta give the guy something. I think giving him a weapon similar to Crying as a Thame, where when the enemy's HP is less than 100%, it would give him not only 5 to attack and speed, but 5 to all stats, since he is opportunistic. Alternatively, he could get a weapon based on the Narcissus legend, where a man fell in love with his own reflection and died because of the man's own arrogance. I say, why not give him a weapon called the Mirror Axe, and give the effect reduce damage from foes' attacks by 40%, boost the unit's next attack by total damage reduced by any source, including other skills, resets at the end of combat. His Refine could be an Omni stance included with Iote's shield for an effect to help with archers. I mean, Narcian is obviously in love with himself. Let's give him a reason to be, shall we?
Buddy, where's the fire? Got kids living around here.
It was kind of funny. Sorry.
Before I made this list, I had a poll on Amino and Serene's Forest, where I asked if seasonal units should get a refine, and most of the votes said yeah. If we put aside the fact that Intelligent Systems seems allergic to giving seasonals refines, the problem arises. Which seasonal deserves a refine the most? Since not all of them are bad per se, so I decided to take a look at each of the seasonal units' stat lines and determine who needed it the most. High contenders include Spring Xander, with an attack stat that is laughable at best. Spring Lucina, who has an admittedly good speed stat, but lacks in every other stat. Bride Sheeta, who is also in the same boat with Lucina, but has 1 more speed and less HP to help with Desperation. Summer Corrin, who got hilariously outclassed by Summer Leyyarn.
Perhaps I've said too much.
That's a big boot!
Don't worry. This'll only hurt a lot. I love this job.
Bigger boot!
Wait, Pat! This bigger boot saved our lives!
Yay! Thank you, stranger!
Stranger? It's the Cyclops!
And finally, Summer Leo. So far, Leo cannot for the life of him get a decent unit at all. Honestly, Leo can be the King of Nor at the end of Birthright, and should better than King of the Bench. Let's see what made Summer Leo so bad. Stat line isn't something home to write about. He has a garbage speed and defense stat, with his resistance stat being the only thing that is usable. With that res stat, he has a small niche as a highly magically bulky infantry unit. But unfortunately, he gets immediately outclassed by Julius, who can not only tie with him point for point, but even has a better tome with Loftus. And finally, his availability! Summer Leo is only available on legendary and mythic banners outside of his own yearly banner, compared to Julius, who is available for free with Grails. Honestly, for his refine, I'd just give Summer Leo a combination of tomes. Brynhildr, Tomato Tome, and Sandwiches effects. His base effect would boost stats on enemy phase, like Sandwiches, and can be a +2 or +3 Omni Drive with Tomato Tome's effects, and his refine would be the damage reduction effect from Brynhildr. The worst part is, I know that Seasonal's getting a refine is wishful thinking at best and a laughable idea at worst. And to intelligent systems, it's not even a funny joke. Oh well, at least Dimitri can be a better Lion King. Ugh. This spot is taken up by a tie of all things, since if you give one unit a refine, you have to give the other one a refine as well. Since, let's face it, they both need the refine so badly. Honestly, every single distant counter sword is in bad need of a refine. But I want to talk about two particular examples, since they fell so far from grace. Introducing both the High Prince of Nor and the Crown Prince of Hoshido, Xander and Ryoma! Remember when everyone thought that Xander was the best Grand Hero Battle unit ever? Or when Ryoma was the most OP? Man, those were some good times. Now Xander is lucky to be used by anyone but the bird herself, but at least he is free, unlike Ryoma, who is probably outclassed by everyone and their grandmother when it comes to fast, heavy-hitting sword units. They both are a weird case since they aren't exactly bad, but rather outclassed. Xander's stat line is pretty solid for a cavalry tank. He has a defense stat that is unrivaled by any other cavalry units, and he even has a good HP and attack stat for a Book 1 unit. However, other units have come along to make using Xander less than ideal. First, Harid, another sword cavalry, also has this encounter, and a weapon that allows him to double at the slightest whiff of a debuff. And while both of these units die at the mere sneeze of a mage within 3 feet of them, Harid has a much better chance of surviving due to his preferential weapon. Granted, Xander has the benefit of being blessable, but that doesn't make him all that much better. Secondly, and perhaps more appropriately, Ares does everything that Xander does, but better! Despite not having a PRF weapon with distant counter innate, that's not much of a comfort when Ares has Special Spiral built into his weapon with -1 cooldown and is easily obtainable. What's worse is that both of his retainers are getting more action than him. Laszlo is shoving his sword into everyone at least twice, and Perry is making kebabs out of her enemies and her blood with the refine she has. So, obviously, Xander needs some sort of refine to help him out. But what about Ryoma? Surely he is good, right? He was the most OP unit in Fates. He shouldn't be bad at all. Well, while having 34 attack and 35 speed is nothing to sneeze at, he is a 5-star exclusive, and that means he's going to have to compete with other 5-star units such as Shannon, who gives 4 more attack, 1 more speed, 10 more defense, a 500 point special, and a sword that gives himself 5 extra points and stops penalties. Legendary Roy is even more of a slap to the face to Ryoma, since he has dragon effectiveness and distant counter built into his weapon, and has a unique C skill with an improved stat line. There is also the free Byleth people got for owning a copy of 3 houses, Brave Celica, Larcy, Female Byleth, or Marita, who comes in 2 flavors, Sunshine and Lollipops, or Hot Topic Customer. So yeah, Ryoma isn't looking very preferable now, is he? Is it any wonder the guy committed seppuku at the end of Conquest?
気の手にかかるは侍の名折れ我が最後の剣見届けよあとは頼む
What should their refines be then? Given Xander's personal skill involves having the opponent's HP at full, why not give him the Noble Lance effect from Dimitri as a base effect, and give him a Spectrum +6 in combat buff on the refine when at full HP, and you probably have a Golden Grand Hero battle unit. Ryoma's personal skill gives a Wodow effect, so His base effect should include a Times Pulse effect, and receive a Refine for plus 10 damage effect when his special activates. I mean, they might not be the ocean's great waves, but they are destined to seek a Refine just out of reach. Many people enjoy the characters and heroes, and it's always great seeing the effort people can put into making their characters top tier or usable in the case of most of these entries. Sometimes people can get bitter over garbage stat lines, and trust me, I know it isn't sweet. But then again, sweet isn't what I would call Gaius' stat line. Awakening was one of my first Fire Emblem games, and seeing some of the characters from it turn into garbage tier units makes me sad. Especially Gaius, who everyone adored back during the days of Awakening. Or at the very least, the fangirls adored. Him having 29 attack really isn't doing him any favors. And him having bad defenses as well means he can't take a hit without him getting knocked out. The only stat he has as good is speed, with 36, which is admittedly solid to this day. But what about Gaius in his base game? Was he any good in Awakening? Well, based on a few Awakening tier lists, he is considered a whopping B tier, which, yeah, he isn't exactly the best unit, but he is good for Lock Punch and being able to get stat boosting items for you or other characters. So, with that in mind, why not give him a special ability to steal combat buffs from the opponent? The base effect would likely be along the lines of neutralize foes' bonuses from skills like Fortify, Rally, etc. during combat, while the Refine would be grants bonuses to attack, speed, defense, resistance during combat, which is equal to current bonus on each of target stats, calculates each stat bonus independently. Admittedly, he is high on this list because of my Awakening bias, but be fair, what list isn't full of bias? You want to talk about Fire Emblem disappointments? There are a few if you ask the fan base. As a fan of Fates, I'm in the boat that Fates gets overhated, but I will recognize that many people in the fan base will call it a disappointment. Radiant Dawn is considered a disappointment to Path of Radiance fans, depending on what the topic is about. And Byleth in Smash is also considered a huge disappointment to non-Fire Emblem fans, since many people was expecting a third-party character. But I have a quick 4-minute video for you to watch if you want to watch that controversy real quick. I would say don't watch this video. But you're already watching a trash channel as it is, so I'm not wasting my breath. Very similarly, Canis was an absolute disappointment in Heroes. Where do I even begin with Canis? Well, he's Nino's uncle, and being a fan favorite from Fire Emblem 7, one of the most popular games in the series, probably built the hype for his turn in Heroes. In addition to this, he was the only Dark Mage you got in 7, the only other user of Dark Magic in 7 being the endgame Athos. Now, imagine the 7th most popular character from the 7th Fire Emblem game get the stat line that makes him look tier 7. Normally, the number 7 is lucky, but with average at best attack and resistance, with bad HP, speed, and defense, he is not going to leave the bottom tier anytime soon. So how can we fix this travesty? Well, we can start by giving him the endgame tone Gespin that you get from the final chapter, since Gespin in the base game was a dark magic tome that had no other effects aside from high base might. It would make sense if the base effect was grant bonus to attack, speed, defense, resistance during combat, which is equal to a current bonus on each of unit stats, calculates each stat bonus independently. And with the Divine Do Refine, I decided to give it a double-edged sword effect, which is, if unit has bonus from skill like Rally or Hone, unit makes a guaranteed follow-up attack, and grants bonus to unit's attack, which is equal to total bonus on unit during combat. If penalty is active on unit, foe makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. This give-take effect of the tome reflects the risk-reward nature of dark magic, especially that of Gespin. That being said, just keep him away from blizzards and you'll be fine.
King Dragon sends his regards. Archibald, no! You can't die.
It's okay, Dennis. It'll be okay.
I put my best equipment on you.
What?
I dodged 1,000 lightning bolts for your final weapon.
Fucking serious right now?
I level grinded you for hours.
You are a dickweed.
There are many things that can make a person fearful. For YouTubers, it's a certain yellow icon. For the Sonic fanbase, it was the original Sonic movie design. For waifus, it's a number between 33 and 35. But what would happen if you wanted to give the Fire Emblem fanbase fear? You mention 3 special words. Battle before dawn. And if you want to make people even more afraid, you mention not the hero's Ursula. Okay, seriously, she's a very powerful member of the Fangs, an important villain in 7, one of the most popular games in the series, and a villain that made Battle Before Dawn such a pain to deal with.
Are you afraid to die?
I don't feel so good.
Mother!
Despite that, she gets turned into a low tier. This isn't a rise of the Valkyries. This is more of its fall from grace. So, what makes Ursa Minor Threat so weak in Heroes? Well, being a Gen 1 Grand Hero Battle unit is probably a big reason why, but being in competition with 2 other free-to-play Blue Tome Cavalry units, those being Reinhardt and La Rochelle, who both have special weapons that Ursula doesn't have, is a pretty big reason. But, you know, let's go a little further, shall we? Ursula has an offensive stat line of 2932, which makes her attack stat bad, and her speed just barely decent. Reinhardt has a brave weapon with a good attack stat, and La Rochelle has 3031 offensive stat line with the ability to give herself +3 to both stats if the opponent is at full HP. Granted, La Rochelle's proficient weapon is pretty bad as it is, but even without that, she still has a better stat line. Everything that she could do is done better by these 2 units. She doesn't have the stats to tank with 35 HP, 19 defense, and 30 resistance, since both HP and defense are horrible for tanking, and her offensive stat line is beaten in every way by Reinhardt and La Rochelle. For her proficiency, it would be easy to say, just give her bolting and allow her to be obnoxious with 3 space hit, but why not give her a different tome to help her? As being a defensive ranged cavalry doesn't really suit anyone, Ursula's main problem stems from being outclassed in different offensive niches. That being the case, why not go the route of an assassin and give her a tome that has super effective damage on all but flyers, which is like an inverse of Excalibur. It would give her a tome benefiting the nature of an assassin, but we could go a step further for the refined, and give her a cooldown -2 effect from the Dark Excalibur, which is a dark version of a weapon she wielded as a morph in the final chapter. This would help her deal even more damage, and instill fear into the hearts of Fire Emblem characters again. You might not ever see a refine like this coming, but it would help her not be a joker in Heroes. Quickfire round of honorable mentions. Finn, Couldn't think of a refine that would fit him, to be honest. However, if I make another one of these lists, he would more than likely get to be a candidate for number 3. Shiro. I couldn't find an idea of how good he was in his base game, to be honest. So, I decided to leave him off the list. Travant. How did they mess up Travant so badly in a Gen 3 or 4 unit? Like, how did they mess him up so badly? Tobin. Literally was number 7 on this list, till he got his refine announced, which meant I had to find another unit I thought needed the refine. Priscilla. Need I explain more, or do I need to make a video about my entire rant about Priscilla and Heroes? You know, if you want to see a video like that, leave it in the comments, because I will make like a 20-minute video of this. When looking at these units, you could say to yourself, well, at least most of their stat lines are unique. You could do something with any of these, even if it wasn't necessarily top tier good. Not so for Clarice, however. Not so for Clarice. Stat-wise, she is irrelevant. Fallen Takumi has a strictly better stat line. His proficient weapon gives +3 speed and deals 10 damage on the 3rd turn, and inflicts panic on opponents caught in the effect. And he's another free archer unit! Clarice was one of the first units introduced when the Refine started, and as such, she was granted a generic Clarice's Bow that inflicts attack speed seal and attack speed smoke on opponents after combat, which, ironically, can be inherited to Fallen Takumi if you really want to use a playstyle that involves this weapon. Or better yet, why not use a Refined Dark Breath from Corrin? Surely that would get the job done better. Or better yet, why not use a different archer entirely? Ugh. If we really want to fix Clarice as a unit, let's give her the love that Aramaya never showed her. First off, let's give her a playstyle that focuses entirely on debuffs. So, let's give her a weapon, -1 cooldown, and inflicts -5 to all stats on any foe that's adjacent to another foe. For her Refine, she could easily get a Blizzard-esque Refine, which gives her the ability to increase her damage based on debuffs to an enemy during combat. It's possible that this would be a little bit too OP for Clarice, but let's face it, she is probably one of the least desirable units currently. And that does it for this list. Fire Emblem Heroes is a fun mobile game, with each of the heroes from Gen 1 getting more and more love as time goes on. And with more content for heroes, each new banner is an excitement to behold in the future. In any case, thanks for watching, and may your summoning bring you endless 5 stars. And just remember that no matter how bad a hero is in this game, just know that they can't be as bad as Danganronpa's V3's ending.